This is Melissa Greenberg, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Look at you coming through. And I've got a beer because it's Friday, everybody.
Woo!
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, Matt, we're doing this again.
Cheers, bud.
I feel left out. I need a drink.
Yeah. Well, go get one.
I don't think you want me to do that.
Hey, Matt, tell us why we have Melissa on the show.
Melissa's a fantastic comedian, a more than above average mother, and a New York transplant living in San Diego County. So, of course, we'll have her on.
Stop. Not one more word, really. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. And just so everybody understands, one of the reasons why we do these shows with Matt and I and having comedians on is because we're trying to create the ramp going up. COVID kind of crushed all of our 2020 goals. And one of the things we were going to do is the Temecula Bastards, which is still trying to open because of COVID, has a comedic stage. And one of the things we're going to do is host comedy events, and in particular, use this stage to raise money and awareness for and support for Save the Brave. So Save the Brave sponsors these episodes. We bring comedians on, and we do the best we can while we try to battle through the COVID, all the challenges and everything. So I appreciate you coming on, helping support Save the Brave.
Of course.
Obviously, Bastards when they're open, and of course the Break It Down show. Thank you so much for being on the show, Melissa.
Thank you. Well, at least we look funny.
Yes.
I've been in the house for months with my kids. Like, have you? Is it just me, or have you forgotten how to talk to people? Like, if you run into a neighbor, suddenly you're in like this hour-long conversation about the mail or something, just because you're dying for human contact.
Yeah.
Or did
Unless there's a screen, I can't talk to people anymore.
Right?
Right.
My
I'm going to invent like a computer laptop and empty frame that you can walk around in, so you feel like you're talking via Zoom or whatever. I'll even brand it down here, Zoom, that kind of thing.
Zoom. Great idea.
I'm not saying I did it, but you know how growing up people kind of made fun of the homeschool kids for being, eccentric or unique, and now we're all homeschool kids. And like my kids are getting weird in the house, and they see the gardener across the street for someone's yard, and they go out and watch. Hi. We were blowing kisses at the Amazon guy. That should have a bell, like the ice cream truck, and all the adults would come running out looking for their Amazon smile package. Oh my God, we are hurting for entertainment.
And do you like your kids more or less now that you've had a chance to homeschool them indefinitely?
I yell at them more. It's not their fault. Mommy's kind of on edge, but I'm lucky that it's not killing me. I get to spend time with them. Other people, I understand it's a real problem, and balancing specific. I always worked at night or whatever. Like, it didn't impact school. I was always tired because I'm always out at night, up at 6 or whenever. But I get to spend time with them. I get to see what they're learning. At the end of the day, if my kids can't read, it's on me. So, yeah.
Well, they have a good teacher, and we're going to get into your comedy career and how you became a mother, but I want to get a little more detail, Melissa, on why CPS came to your house. Can you?
Okay, look, it wasn't CPS. It was the sheriff. And,
okay.
Yeah. This is some crap. Okay, so everybody's on a Zoom classroom or a Google Classroom, whatever, and we're in first grade. I have boy-girl 6-year-old twins, and their best friend lives right behind us. So my mom, after a year of planning, rented a beach house, and she said, "You know what? Let's take little so-and-so with us, Austin." I can say his name; no one knows him. And we took Austin with us, and we went for 2 days. They got to have this kid over, and everybody went boogie boarding, whatever. They came back sunburned. This is one of those fair, freckly kids, and he had all that blue sunscreen on, but he still managed to get sunburned cheeks, whatever. It was fine, but the Monday, we have school online, and at about 3:30, the cops show up at my house, and they say, yeah, we're here to do a wellness check. And I had an argument with my boyfriend that day. I'm like, oh, he's fine. I mean, I can't hear, I thought it's about me, right?
Yeah, his bruises will heal. Yeah.
I said, I don't know what you heard, but it was his fault, and he's fine. And he's like, look, like what, And he said, no, we're here to follow up on Austin. I said, why? What happened? And they said, well, he was in class. And I said, yeah, I saw him. And the teacher, and I don't believe it's a regular teacher, I think it was like a speech teacher afterwards, saw him in class and called the police because of his sunburn. And I thought, well, why wouldn't she ask, or ask him how he's feeling? Or we've been in the house so long that a teacher can't recognize when someone's been outside, like in the air. So like, that's how bad this is. So yeah, I had to, the cop was looking at me. He says, well, they said, we went to his house and he looked sunburned and you said you're at the beach. And I'm like, he goes, your stories check out.
Your stories check out.
Right? He's sunburned. He didn't have like black eyes or anything. So I said, come here. Let me show you something. And I call my kids out. My kids have like red sunburn streaks in various places. And he's like, what, I said, they're sunburned too. And this is what happens when you try to put sunscreen on a 6-year-old that doesn't want sunscreen. I mean, They had red eyes, but the cops, like, really? And I get that teachers are probably seeing some serious crap right now. Like, I'm looking into Matt's house and I'm looking at the artwork, but
They're far away from now.
You read enough lips, like, like I'm sure they see some arguments, but a sunburn.
But what happened to just simply a phone call to handle this at the lowest level? I mean, I get it. Like, call the cops, and I'm not saying that you didn't deserve to have the cops called on you. Of course, that's probably likely.
Well, because he was with me, they were just checking it out, and I just thought, and the cop was like, he was Hispanic, Latinx. I don't know what we're calling people now. That's my controversial bit.
I call them people.
Yeah. My point is, he was dark skinned. I am darker skinned. My kids have lighter skin. This kid had light skin freckles, so he was sunburned. I'm like, whoa, you look like a baked potato, but he didn't look damaged, And
did the parents of Austin get mad at all? Like, returning?
No, they were like, he was with the neighbors he went to the beach. So the cop was like, what beach did you go to? And he was asking, like, it was an investigation, and I couldn't help myself. Like, I couldn't stop talking. That's how the lawyers do it. They say, is there anything else? And then you start spitting out facts. And I said, I mean, the cop was like, well, I'm satisfied. He looks sunburnt. And I'm like, I go, well, how do you know I wasn't beating him all weekend? And then I'm like, why am I still talking?
Because it's human interaction.
Oh, yeah. And I'm weird in the house. But the cop was like, you're lucky it's not CPS. And I was like, why? Why? They don't know what sunburned people look like either? I mean, I had sunburned shoulders. He goes, I get sunburned. I'm like, well, then you can understand what happened. Like, why are you here?
Do you call the cops on yourself?
Right. Like, you went to his house first. You saw the kid was sunburnt. And you still felt you had to come over here to check out my story.
So do you have a history of sunburning children, Melissa? That's what we want to know. Or is this an isolated incident?
I sunburnt one of my kids once when they were little.
I mean,
you don't know.
Luckily, there's no crime going on in San Diego, apparently, where they can come and bother you for, like, babysitting and
we weren't broadcasting it, at Gymboree or something. Just,
That's true.
Babies, they get a little pink, like, oops. But
I once swung my kid's head when she was a tiny kid. I swung her around in a chair, and she was in my arms, but we kind of did one of these numbers in a chair, and I crushed her face into the keyboard shelf. I didn't drop her. Okay. How'd that end? It happens. Call the cops on me.
Why are you admitting this?
I don't know. Who says it really happened? Maybe I made it up. There's no proof. You got nothing on me, coppers.
Oh my God. No.
The quarter beer's getting to him.
I couldn't stop. Like, how do you know it's a sunburn?
Yeah.
The guy's like just looking at me like, you should stop.
I have to ask a question. This is me actually asking. I have my hand up like and everything, like at school. If you're working the desk, ring, ring, hello. Yes, I see a kid that may or may not be sunburned on Zoom. Do you go? Okay, great.
Well, that's what I didn't know. Like, why did it go from the teacher to the cop? Like, why didn't it go to the principal? Oh, the principal hates me. And I get that too. So, I mean, that's cool. But I got like, we're in first grade. So she's got 5 years left to like work through her stuff with me. I ain't leaving. So maybe she was like, no, you should call the cops. But like, it wasn't my kid. So if it was my kids, for sure CPS would be here if it was her. But this kid has a speech class after the regular teacher knew we were going to the beach, knew he was going because the kids talk about this in class, and we wrote about it, and we took the iPads to the beach and we showed pictures. I'm like, she knew where we were. But the speech teacher who sees this kid once a week might have just seen him on Monday and gone, whoa, but like, why wouldn't she ask the parents, is he okay?
Yeah.
Or, you know, and the kid told the cops, like, he said, were you at the beach? He says, yeah. When? I don't know. Like, kids don't, and the mom wanted to choke him, you know.
So did the cop, Melissa, give any sort of clue, like, this is ridiculous? Did he say, like, I
I
shouldn't be
don't
here?
think they're allowed to do that.
Okay.
Like, he had all the cop language.
Oh, so he took it seriously.
He was sort of smiling. And again, he was kind of telling me, like, you could stop talking now. When I'm like, how do you know I wasn't beating him all weekend? You know, like, who knows why his face is red? Maybe he's crying, you know?
Yeah. Maybe his grandma pinched his cheeks too much.
Yeah. I don't know. But the cop was like, well, your stories, what did he say? Line up, or the way that he said it was very investigatory. And I was like, ooh, my story lines up, checks out. I still had, like, the kids still had sunscreen, sand on them. I'm like, I mean, we had evidence on us.
Yeah.
But
wow, that's awesome.
Go outside and someone calls the cops.
I'm gonna have you babysit my kid.
Dude.
But you know, whatever.
Yeah. Nothing like a little drama and chaos. And of course, I'm in a cul-de-sac, and he parks across the street in front of one of the neighbors' houses. So somebody came over later and they said, did you see the cops at Stacy's house? I'm like, yeah.
Stacy.
You know.
Did you go and blow up next door?
Yeah, we live in an HOA neighborhood. So yeah, she must not have brought her cans in on time, or I don't know. I don't know what that was about. You know, we rent, so we're the trash.
Well, you have an interesting motherhood story. So how are babies made is our question, Melissa.
Right? If you ask my kids, they'll tell you babies come from Amazon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And my daughter was, up until she's 6 now, but almost 7. But up until she was 4, I said, we were talking, do you have questions about babies being made? I wanted to start talking about telling them about their story because it's a little unique. And she says, oh, they come from Amazon. They just take a long time to get delivered to the hospital. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. They're like explaining it to each other. Okay. I said, no, that's not actually it. I did IVF, but I did IVF a ton of times and it didn't work. So I ended up getting donor eggs and donor sperm. And I was married at the time. And when the doctor told me, hey, you have an 80% chance of getting pregnant if you use donor eggs, that's where you take someone else's eggs, I was like, okay, let's do that. This is thousands and thousands of dollars. Like, it took me 2 seconds to be like, oh, it's not my DNA. And then I thought about my family tree and I was like, let's do that. They scream, these people. Like, they make jokes about sperm donors and whatnot. But if you're shopping, you're not looking for bruised fruit. Like, you're looking for, like, oh, it needs to be organic, and if you can afford it, you're looking for the best fruit you can get. So
you have Nobel Prize sperm at your disposal.
Dude, 5 times National Honor Society. Like, I'm gonna give them. I did better picking a sperm donor and an egg donor than I did marrying. So I've been married twice, and I live with my longtime love now, but he wants to get married, and if it doesn't work out, people are going to start thinking it's me. So no.
And then leave it to white people to rebrand damaged semen into, things like vintage or heirloom semen. The best.
They had, what's interesting, I used California Cryobank. My husband at the time had backed out on having a baby and thought that meant that I would still stay married to him. And I said, that doesn't work like that. He was like, well, you'd bring home some donor baby and then what? And I'm like, you wouldn't be here. So we don't know what would happen in that scenario. It took him a while to understand. No, like I did the whole process. He had to sign off on everything because we were still married. And I threatened him. I'm like, if you can back out, but not without a consequence. You're going to sign off on everything. You need it. Like they give you a psych test. Like they want to make sure you're not going to do something crazy. So yeah, he had to sign off on everything. Bless his heart. We're friends, so it's cool. He knows I'm talking shit about him.
Well, you made a friend. There's an article written about you on People Magazine.
Yes.
So can you?
Yes.
You don't have to give the whole article, but it's kind of a unique story that I'm sure the audience wants to hear.
They didn't, but once I tell them, they're going to be like, ooh. Like when I think about it, it's like, ooh. No matter what mistakes I've made in my life, I did something so cool that I'm good as far as karma. The process is to get a baby, to do IVF isn't easy, and you can't tell people you're trying to have a baby because faster than if you were just doing it and waiting, because it's all like medically, they watch everything. So people ask you like, any baby? And then how do you say, no, it didn't work. There's $19,000 down the drain. Like what does someone say to you? Like, darn, gosh. So you do it silently and you go through a cycle, which is like, can I say period without freaking anyone out? Like you wait, they put the egg, the sperm together, they put it in, you wait. And meanwhile, you're waiting with a group of other women on the same day, the same time, and you make friends. And I made a friend and at the time we just figured we were meant to be friends to go through the process. Well, what ended up happening is it didn't work for her. And I'm one of those people that like, no, I'm going to keep trying. If I'm 100 years old and have a baby, like, I'm still trying. And I got pregnant with twins, and she came to the hospital and she was so happy for me, and it hadn't worked for her, but she's so happy and in so much pain, because when you can't have a baby and you're trying or whatever else, and everybody's like, oh, my husband just sneezed on me and I got pregnant. I'm like, that's not how it happens. And, bring him over here. It's the worst. And you have like, people don't know why you won't go to baby showers. Come on, it's family. Screw you and your family. No. So I said to her after a couple of months, I said, I have 2 other embryos frozen, and, do you want them? Because she'd seen my kids and she saw the end result. I mean, they say the apple can't fall too far from the tree. Like the genetic pool is only so big. They got to look something like my kids. Like if you like how that looks. And, so a year later, she had their sister, their full sibling. So she and I are not related. I got a sperm donor and an egg donor, but I couldn't leave the 2 embryos in storage. What was I going to do? I'm not giving them to science now that I have these 2 kids. So there were 4 embryos. 2 were my kids. 1 became her daughter a year later. And they're in New York. I'm here, and we talked. But it's a trip. I gave someone a baby. I mean, it's not as easy to do as you'd think. To give up genetic material, it's not adoption. It's like you're donating stuff. There's a lot of legalese involved, but we did it, and it's wild.
So are the siblings in touch with each other, or what's their relationship like?
They know of each other. It's a little weird to say to my kids, like they know they have a sister in New York, and they don't kind of know. I mean, they know what a sister is, but they haven't met yet. But they're aware of her. There are a few half siblings as well from other people who have used the sperm donor.
So your kids and this other girl, they're full siblings.
Full siblings. Like if I had all 4, I'd have quads.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have 2. I just gave her 1 embryo, and the embryo, like that baby was born a year later, but that's a full genetic sibling. So we're not related, but the kids are.
One of my very good friends, I grew up with him, his sister had his baby, because she carried it for his wife.
Okay.
Right?
See, we need a little more.
Yeah.
Well, you have to let it hang so you can enjoy it a little bit. But yeah, his sister had his baby, and there wasn't incest involved. It was just a wonderful
right.
gift.
No, I think she was the oven.
Exactly. She was the oven.
It wasn't her egg, otherwise, you know, you know.
But this is the thing about like modern families. Like my ex-wife and I get along great, and my daughter's half siblings. You know, there's not really a word for what I am. You know, maybe I'm an uncle or something. You know, but that's how modern families go. Like you have these new things. There's not really, it doesn't accurately describe you. You know, you could be a cousin or something, but you're related in some way
Right.
because
Well, she and I mean, we're not sisters-in-law, me and
right.
my friend. We're, you know, sisters in parenting, like sisters in, like our kids made us parents. So we're sort of sisters-in-law, if you think about it. Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's what we would be.
And I guess technically when you marry someone, they become your brother or sister as well, because, you know, like
You're joining families.
Yeah, when you join the family.
See, I start thinking about my brothers and I'm like, oh no. Yeah. Oof. This isn't going in a good place.
So that might be a good segue to comedy.
Oh, that, yeah. Well.
So how did it get? I mean, we'll let we'll unpack this a little slowly, but you're in New York. You know, you weren't
minding my own business
when you started, but you know, what kind of motivated you to pick up a mic and entertain people?
I acted in college, high school and college, and it's a totally different animal, comedy from acting. And I was a cocktail waitress at the La Jolla Comedy Store. My friend Dante was performing all the time down there. Like since we're like 23, that's how long this has been. And I always wanted to do it, but it's kind of like karaoke. Like if you don't sing and you get the mic up in front of you, suddenly all those great ideas you had. So it wasn't until I was about 40 and I had been trying to get pregnant since, I'm in my mid-30s. I got married for the second time. Don't judge me. In my mid-30s, and I was trying to get pregnant, and it wasn't happening. And at some point, I stopped at about 40, 41, and I was just like, I have seen so much crap in my life. Like, what really scares me? There's people do it really, like stupid people do it. I could do this. This isn't surgery that you just pick it up and you go to open surgery mics and you guys just operate on each other. This is like, what's the worst that could happen to me? I got to be at least, like I went to a few showcases. I saw one kid get up there and he was trying to tell a joke. He got all sweaty and he said something. He was talking about high school football or something. And he said something and he just stopped and he yelled, "Butt sex," and ran off the stage.
You stole my joke.
Yeah, right? And I thought, oh, I could at least do better than that. So let me take a class. And I went to Manhattan Comedy School.
Wait, so you were in San Diego, then you went to Manhattan?
I went to San Diego State. I mean, I graduated college and then I up and left and went to New York thinking, well, I can always go back. But you don't go back. You stay in New York and you fight it out until something happens to you. And you don't admit that you failed ever, even if you do repeatedly, which I did. But I took classes with Manhattan Comedy School and I loved it. And I was like, okay, there's 17 other people who all have the same like end game, not to die on stage, not to suck. And while I've been on fertility meds, I've been doing all of this, and this was just a way of not having to think about why I don't have a baby. Like it just suddenly became like my mission. And I started doing comedy shows. After I graduated, I took the master's class, which is really just more of the same with the same group. I'm like, come on guys, let's do this again. And in between our breaks, because you have to take the fertility medication at a certain time. So I'm heating up like the oil in my bra to jam it through a syringe. I'm shooting up like the Port Authority bathroom. It's classy. It's just like it has to be at the same time every day. And they all kind of went with me. And my first jokes were about why I couldn't get pregnant, which is apparently hilarious to some people.
With butt sex, that was the punchline.
Yeah, butt sex. I couldn't end with that. That would have really done it. But yeah, so I started doing comedy because I was like, what am I so afraid of? And then I had a place to talk about infertility as a platform. And people would come up to me after shows and just go, I'm so glad, you're talking about this. And I got on the radio. I was on a radio show for a couple of years on 1600 AM. That's like the cab station. So all the taxi cabs play it, and I'd be like, hey, this one's for Muhammad. Hey, you know, that's like all of them. So, and I just continued, and I realized once you start doing comedy, nobody's going to put you on stage because you're not funny. And you burn through all your friends really quickly. So I started putting on shows near my house and emceeing them. And I was terrified. For the first 3 years, I think I walked up on stage like, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up. Oh, I forgot everything I'm going to say. I'm going to throw up. But I looked around and I was like, I'm in my 40s. I was like 41, 42. Like, if you're 22, you're going to get up there and talk about weed and masturbating or whatever you do. You're fearless. But they have no material.
Yeah.
But people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 70s, I used to sell classes for Manhattan Comedy School after a while, and I would do it that way. I said, you guys have stories. Life has touched you in a way that it hasn't touched 22-year-olds who have nothing else to talk about but weed and masturbating. I mean, maybe that's what the 70-year-olds have to talk about, but I found that people are kind of a rich tapestry by then. Sure.
And this was still in New York City?
In New York. And I did that. I came back here about 2014, 2015. So I've been back a few years now. But
there is something to be said about that tapestry. You know, being 22 and being funny, that's great. Figure it out, you know, all that kind of thing. But at 42, at 52, at, you know, whatever these older ages, you know, your people you care about have died. Your best friends have gotten divorces, or you've gotten a divorce, and I promise getting a divorce is way harder than any mic, you know, like
yeah. Like I that's what I said. I was like, what is there left to scare me? I've had major surgeries, I've had people die, but I was lucky, you know, and I would meet comics and they're like, oh, you know, their lives are you hear about comics being really messed up. It's like, well, I'm depressed, I have alcoholic parents. I'm like, you're so lucky. Like, they have material. I didn't have alcoholic parents. I had one friend. We used to get together and write. The New York comedy scene is cool because it's competitive, but it's collaborative. Mm-hmm. So it's maybe 4 people that are racing each other. Like, we would be a little group of 4 people, like, who can bring their A game. And you can get to a lot more shows in a small amount of time than you can in California, where you have to drive everywhere. And one girl, she did well, but she goes, you know, I'm not getting those ha 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 laughs. What do I have to do? And I said, well, let's see what you're about. Like, I knew what she was kind of talking about. I said, you don't talk too much about your parents. How's your relationship with your mom? And she was like, oh, it's fine. And I thought, like, when I think about my mom, it's like, oh, I love my mom. Or people go, oh, my mom was, you know, a hot mess or whatever. People aren't really neutral on their mom. So I'll keep her kind of thing. Yeah. She's like, oh, no, it's fine. And I said, well, what is that? What's there? Because she's from the South, so she's very nice. And she says, well, she was a Marine. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And she goes, they had me when I was like, they were like later in life. So she was really young, living in like a retirement community. So she grew up like learning how to play mahjong and stuff. I was like, okay. And she goes, oh, yeah, my mom had narcolepsy.
Come on.
Right? Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. And why don't you talk about that? Like, and she goes, well, it really only happened. Like, it would get worse when she was mad. I'm like, oh, I get mad all the time. Will make me turn this car around. You know, like, oh my God.
Yes.
So yeah, like, you never know. Like, everybody's got a vein they can tap. Sometimes you just need, people say things about comedy classes, but suddenly you're in a group of people that are really focused on the same thing. And I think classes are great. And I don't even mind bringer shows. They're a great way to get a tape. You know, no one's holding a gun to your head, say, hey, make all your friends come to this show and get on stage. You have to. You know? Yeah. But I just started producing my own shows because then I got to be the boss. When I could be on stage, and it didn't matter if I was funny. I got comfortable. So now up until COVID, had several shows in the Inland Empire, Empire Comedy SD.
Yeah, I've worked with Melissa. She's fabulous. But I want the audience to kind of appreciate what it's like to do stand-up, because we have comedians on here. We haven't had many producers, and you're
Okay.
and even if you weren't on the show, you're a fantastic producer. I love your shows, but it's
I've
not
been
easy. So
It's
can
not
you
easy. It's not easy.
compare and contrast for
It's
us?
a pain in the balls. If in my case, I had my boyfriend build me a bunch of stages, like platforms that I can bungee cord together, because a lot of bars, you might find a nice bar to do a show in, and then they don't have a stage, or they have a microphone. A wireless mic that feeds through the jukebox is a bad mic to use. So
Yes.
yeah, so I had my own like amp, and I learned like where you can't stand with your own equipment because it'll pop. And I would sit there and turn the thing back on terrible. But you learn, And I learned to charge money. I don't do comedy for free. Like your wife doesn't do surgery for free just because she really feels like doctoring that day,
Not in America. Yeah.
Put a lot of money. Like, do you know how much hair product is in here just to look nice for this? Like, this stuff is expensive. So, yeah. And if there's a lot of comics out there that are like, yeah, we just want to put a show together and do it for free. And I yell at all of them. I said, you are devaluing the business. You are discounting me. You will make it very hard for me. Like, why would a venue want to pay someone for a show when they can get a free show? Oh, we'll just work for tips. And then in a few months when it's really successful, it won't be. But in a few months when it is, we're going to ask for money. And I said, you can't negotiate up. You can, but it's harder. So I go in and I ask for what I feel the market will bear. I'm not going to tell you the number because it ranges depending on the size of the venue. Like I wouldn't go into a 40-seat room and say, hey, for $500, I could fill this place. Well, no. But I do my shows during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. So I'm not competing with anybody I can get headliners that are hanging around, who are maybe off in between tours instead of trying to compete with somebody on a weekend. They get a nice room to work something out. There's still bars, venue owners. Everybody thinks, oh, the venue's going to love this and they're going to promote it. They don't.
No.
So you have to learn marketing, where to post your flyer. Comics don't promote themselves. So you have to learn to do that. You have to learn what happens if they don't show up. Am I prepared to do an hour and a half? No, but I have. Like I MC all my own stuff. I'm trying now I have extra stages, extra equipment. I had multiple venues, and I have groomed a friend who is a nice MC, somebody that won't offend the client no matter what. Yeah, Dan Durney.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan. Like somebody I trust that I can send. You can put them in front of a venue owner, and he won't be the guy that's drinking on stage. I'm so high, like people think that's funny to do. Like I don't drink on these jobs. I don't hook up with other comics. I mean, I have a boyfriend, so that would be a dick move. But
and he makes sets for you and stuff, so you don't want to lose him.
Right? Oh my God, he keeps doing stupid stuff. I love it. It's like I'm like, yeah, do it again. Yeah, keep talking. And then he's a 10-minute rant. You do enough shows, you run out of material real quick. There's only so much crowd work you can come up with. But emceeing everywhere really helps. I also look at these venues. I did property management for a long time. And if you can look at a venue owner like a business person and not like, hey, I'm a comic and I want to perform and you need to give me money. Well, why? Because I can look at, and having been around the restaurant industry for a long time, I can look at their tables and I can look at their menu and I can say, okay, the average person is spending $20 in here. So what percentage of that is going to go to pay for the comedy show? How many seats are here? How many people can fit at the bar to pay? Will it be enough to pay for me to do a show here and can I give a headliner a few $100s? Who can I get for this much money? And so I work that out. And then I explain to the owner, I'm going to fill this room. Like, I'm going to fill it. I have a great Black X marketing. I work with them, who helps get when you're making Facebook ads, which really suck because you think you've really done it right. And then you're just throwing money down a hole. I've learned not to do that, to spend less but to really get engagement, I have things I do at each show to keep the audience communicating. You want to be friends with me on Facebook? Sure. Sure. You never know who you don't know,
Right.
until you know them. And it's like, hey, we're all friends. I could be better at working social media. I think it's important. But at this point, they keep coming up with new apps. Parler. You heard of that one?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a new one. And I guess it's for people that maybe might lean Republican or something because they're not censored as much. I still know it's like Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, kind of all combined. I don't know how to use it, but I'm on it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
Same.
Twitter is a cesspool, but
Yeah.
people follow that.
Yeah, you got to swim in this cesspool a little bit so that you have a chance.
Producing is good because I make money doing comedy. Where if I was sitting home trying to get booked, I'm competing with every other female comic. I don't talk about getting cum in my eye. I'm not lowest common denominator.
No.
I try not to be. I have some very well crafted testicle jokes, but
well, you had a hilarious three-way joke or attempted one that was one of the funniest, smartest. I don't want to reveal it.
I don't about swinging.
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, never mind that bit that I worked on for like weeks or whatever, and you can take it to pretty much any city. Every city has a pocket of people that are, weren't.
Any city worth visiting.
Right? But I got to sit there and practice with a microphone doing this. Just to get that noise of like what it would sound to me like two fat people doing it. And I'm like, this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Like ham slapping together sound. Of like, you do it in a mic and it's awesome. And I was like, what a job. Can your wife do that? No, at work. I mean, she could, but after they're out is probably better.
There aren't many perks to being a stand-up, but one was a long time ago. I was having a conversation with my wife about, is it better if I say this homeless lady flashed her tits or jerked me off? And she thought about it. She's like, jerk off. It's more specific. And I was like, this is a cool gig. When it really mattered.
No, word choice is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's important, but it's really funny to do the producer hat versus the comedy hat, because there's something to be said like, oh, well, she wouldn't be getting booked if she weren't producing the show. I also probably wouldn't be an alcoholic. I'd get more sleep. I mean, it is nerve-wracking. I mean, I'm sure Pete. You've got to be competitive. You got to make nice to the other people in your industry. You have to book strategically. You have to be careful. You don't want to hurt the audience. You don't want to hurt your venue. I've had to tell. I mean, the shows I do are still bars, even if they're nice bars. So I have found a lovely way, because I'm older. There's an expectation. When I started, there was an expectation that I had more experience. And I realized that if I was 22 saying, hey, I'm going to fill your restaurant, it would be bullshit. But because I was in my 40s and I could talk like, hey, you're a business owner. I don't make money unless you do. We both want the same thing. Once they realize I'm in it for the long game, that I'm in it, they're like, well, it'll build. I go, no, the first one will be amazing. People will talk about it forever. And we're not going to build. You don't build a comedy show. You do a comedy show. You start out huge, and that's it. Like you don't.
But that first part, Melissa, getting butts in the seats is the hardest thing to do. And I'm not asking you to reveal your secret sauce, but for someone out there, say maybe there's a show at Bastards, for instance, in Temecula, and you want the first one, to be a hit. What tips would you divulge? As
a producer / MC, if it was the first show, I'd be hosting it. I go out into the audience before the show. I get there early. I want to see who's there. Hey, how are you?
How do you get the audience there if there's never been one before?
Okay. So you don't book a comedy show a week before. You book a comedy show no less than a month before.
Okay.
And you start talking on social media. You start begging people to go. You have to lay the groundwork. It helps to be funny. It helps to know people, and it helps to make nice. Not that disingenuous nice. I mean, hey, watch my podcast. It means that if I want people to see the weekly podcast I do, Cover Stories, I go to other people's stuff. I like their things. I
Mhm.
comment, hey, that looks awesome. I make friends with, hey, that's a pretty dress. I get to know them. Is that might be an old school way to do this, because there are apps that will tell you how many people eat in your area
Mhm.
and what they spend. I have a lot of ways that I have developed over the shows that I do, a huge database. And that to me is worth money. I'm not
Mhm.
going to sell that. I'm not going to, it's why I don't do bringer shows. Why? So I
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
hand 50 people to someone else so I can make $25.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah.
it, so I may not be the most famous or the funniest or, the best credits, but I'm solid, and I'm known now for comedy, for good shows, because I'm a woman, and I don't know if this is specifically why, but it helps. I get the women in the room.
Nice.
If
Yeah.
you can make friends with groups, if you can find groups to come out,
Oh, that's huge.
that helps a lot. But I see plenty of comics that want to talk about how they screwed a fat chick. Ha ha ha. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Guess what? Half your audience is fat chicks, and guess what? We're the ones that decided to bring stupid with us to the comedy show. So we're half of that buying decision. And I have found that, like I've said this, if you have one day, if the world is ending in one day, you got one day left to live on Earth, piss off a woman, because that will be the longest day of your life. You want to,
Well, and the other thing, I want to say this too, because if you go and you go after the fat person, yeah, there's fat people in the crowd, but who doesn't feel fat in that crowd? Like you're better off
men,
identifying with the we all feel fat. Like here I am, 50.
well, right, but there are people that will banging a fat chick like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I would say, they got more incentive. We got something to.
Yeah.
I have put on 40 pounds in the last 4 years since I had my kids. I was like a size 6. Now I have to have those. Oh, she has a nice face conversations with, or people giving me like, if you just did this diet, I'm like, no, like, oh, this will curb the cravings, as if like I'm eating because I'm hungry. Like, no. If you piss off the women and lose the room, it's on you. You're a dick.
Mhm.
You earned that.
Mhm.
Like you deserve to fail. And
How much time do you spend? I mean, the business stuff is great. Like you're describing a podcast basically, and you have a podcast, so you know how this goes.
uh,
I can't.
I
I
co-host.
backed off
I don't
on
produce that crap. I have nothing to do with all the
good.
Zooms.
Good for you. Yeah. And as a guy that makes money producing other people's podcasts, please continue to do that.
Yes.
But
Yeah. You would be the person. I'm like, could you make this? And can I look thin? Because that's all I care about.
yes, I'll make you look thin. I'll just black the screen out.
Yeah. Whatever. Just shrink it.
But these business decisions are huge. I mean, like people ask me all the time, how do you monetize? Because my show is big. It's very successful. It's got a name. I can book all kinds of people that I got no business booking,
I
except
know
for the
you
fact
got
that
me. Amazing.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
We
I
pulled
made
some
Matt do it.
strings. Yeah.
Right.
But that ability to, like, as a podcaster, I make money. That how rare that is, and it's
Yeah.
not because of ads. So when you look at like how long my show's been around and the quality of guests that I've had and the amount of success, like my show is the first percentile.
22.
What's that?
But you're not 22. So something
Yeah,
you're
right.
saying is resonating with people. You're making nice. You're engaging your listeners. Like you get people to talk about themselves, and they get their friends to, oh, you got to listen. I was interviewed on this thing. And
Well, my question though is as you look at your business, right? You have to have all the hats. You have to you're everything. Your marketing, and if not your marketing, you're the marketing chief marketing officer. You have all these things you have to either shop out, spend time or money getting done. Is it more important for you to write jokes or to improve your gigs?
that's a good question. No, I would say this: if you are just starting out, and the person who told me this was Corey Kahaney. She is a career comedian. She's been on late night TV several times. She was my teacher at Manhattan Comedy School. This is what she does. Like when, I guess, like I said, you get a teacher on a Monday night because they're not on tour. She said, producing will cut into your writing. And I thought, well, that's weird. How would that happen? It's a monthly show. I had no idea what else I would be doing all month besides obsessing about how I'm going to get people, where are the pockets of people coming? Can I reach a group of alcoholics? Can I reach a bunch of exercise women? Can I, you spend all your time doing that. And then you get on stage and you're thinking about everything. instead of your material. But it also helped free me from my material. And what I learned from my marketing guy, I also had a restaurant years ago, and I tried to do everything. And what you just end up being a hot mess. So you have to get to a point when you start making money to hand some stuff off, the stuff you're not good at. So my marketing is handled, like I said, Black X marketing. I went from, like, let's say 100 people responding, 150 people responding. If I send it out to 2,000 people, 150 people on Facebook might say they're going. Well, I send it out to less people. Now 500 people say they're going. And it means that maybe 100, 150 people will show up at that show. Like, I know that show will be full. So but I don't have to do that. Like, I know that the marketing people can, it's worth it to pay someone to do that. So yeah, starting out, no, but delegating and letting your business work for you instead of you working your business. Like, I would like to get to the point, I was about to be there, where I had some shows that were on automatic and I could let other people MC. I still would get the credit for booking them or for whatever. They would be still my brand. But if I dropped in to do 10 minutes, it was great. But if I could leave it, let's say, in Dan's hand to handle the customer, to make sure that, you know, the show's running on time, to make sure everybody's there. You know, what happens if the headliner's late, like by an hour and a half? What do you do? Right. Oh yeah. So,
but that's that executive level, that executive producer thing.
I don't know if I answered the question, but
no, you did. You answered it great.
It's better to work on that and let your material. If you MC enough, then your material doesn't matter as much, because you should be using who's there. That's the beauty of stand-up comedy, of live performances anyway, because you're using what happened right there. And I just got to do my first outdoor show on the 1st, and there were about 12 people there, bless their hearts. They're outside. They had little heaters, but it was, you know, and the comics were newer comics before me, and they're doing their material. And, you know, you got a little bit of, you know, and the show was called 2 laugh minimum. And I'm like, well, we've crushed that quota. Yeah. Barely. we got our 2. And I realized it's like, well, okay, there's 12 people here. Talk to them. And let's make the live coolness of stand-up comedy. This is a situation that won't happen again, even if I do the exact same material 1,000 times in different places. Let's have this event together. And that comes from experience. Like, I finally hit a point after 10 years in comedy, I don't feel new anymore. And that I was comfortable enough to, let me just stretch out and see who's here. And let's see what we can come up with by talking to these people. Maybe it'll lead me into some material. Maybe but I got to do my material at the end, but you're not married to it anymore. You're not like,
did you bring the heaters in to purposely add to the sunburn effect that you were going to imply upon to make the sheriff come? And
no. That was at night.
The tanning beds.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's getting a sunburn today.
Yeah. I think an MC's job is to be likable, to kind of handle whatever goes down, to talk about what happens. If something happens, I think Wally Collins is another one who's a career comedian who gave me a piece of advice that was real valuable. Right before I got on stage, my very first time on stage, they're calling my name, coming to the stage, Melissa Greenberg, and I'm about to walk up to the ramp at Gotham Comedy Club, like in New York City, and I'm sweating. I sweat through my shirt. I got pits. I stink. It's one of those fabrics that traps stink, and you know that anybody standing next to you knows you stink, and you stink of fear. Like you're rotting from the inside out. And I'm just waiting to try to look confident to go up, and he leans in and he goes, do the funny stuff. They like that. And I'm like, oh my God, all I have is my 6 minutes to go impress 250 people. I'm a, you know, what do you mean? But having more experienced comics be accessible, to be available. You know, these people, they think their material is solid gold, and I would run things by people. What do you think about this premise? And I let them, if somebody came up to me and said, you know what you should say, even if I didn't use it, I was just honored that they were listening enough to weigh in on my joke. You know, like, thanks for paying attention. And you don't always use it. How many family members have ever come up to you and said, you should do this in your little skits, or you could use that time I had this thing happen at the doctor's. You're like, no, but they want to get in on the fun. And there's no other reason to do stand-up comedy. It's not the money.
One of the things that I bet you have this happen to you, because we produce things that are hard to produce and take a lot of time. My friends, my family, who primarily won't listen to the show because, that's just, and you guys
and then tag them in the Facebook thing. Hey, we talk about Uncle Pete.
Yeah, here's Uncle Pete. But here's the thing that people love to do. They want me to succeed. And I'm always like trying to figure it out, openly trying to figure it out. And they love to give me more work. They won't just simply share the fucking show, or like cajole their friends. They just like, hey, you know what you should do? Spend this money and do this. I'm like, motherfucker, I already got enough on my plate. Leave me the fuck alone. Go back to ignoring me.
No, you know what you do? I have this problem with cover.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And I said to Ace, we were talking about the posts that comics put up. There's a lot of comedians that were strippers or were stripper adjacent. They were sort of half nakedy. So all their pictures are like, and and their boobs are out. And it's like, I don't even know if they're funny. I probably wouldn't book them. That's like, you're not funny if I'm seeing so much of your tits, but people are following them. So Ace, my co-host, he comes up with a flyer, he comes up with a thing, and he's like, how, we want to get people to look at the thing. And I said, well, let's just put tits on the flyer. So I took the little pencil on your phone, the little note where you can write stuff, and I started drawing tits on everybody. And he said that was the most clicked on thing. Even if people weren't commenting or whatever, he was in the grocery store and he said the manager of the grocery store said, nice tits. And he was like, what? And he said, I saw your picture online and I had drawn boobs on it. So people notice boobs. And is that bad marketing?
Nope.
No. So ladies, get yourself a roll of duct tape. So what is it? Who's the woman that Corcoran, the woman that says if you don't have big boobs, put bows on your ponytails? I don't know. It sucks to have to say that it's a motivator. Just anything to get someone to click on the flyer.
Yeah.
Click on the link.
Click on the link.
I did a show with Matt. I said I'm opening for this guy, and I just pointed an arrow to a picture of Matt with
no boobs though. Next
no
time.
Boobs. I was like, he's funny. They're like, who's that? I'm like, show up and see. They're like, I don't know. But I get to open for him.
One of my favorite things to do is look on Instagram, and you can't see this, but I'm just flashing through Instagram, and that's the hashtag podcast thing. And it's always the same thing. Like, what are you who was on your show? Why do I see your tits? There's this one girl that's in all the time. Like, how does she master this code of always
being the hashtag podcast? That's actually the name of, I don't want to advertise her.
It's just on Instagram, like if you hashtag things, they come up. And so there's this one girl that constantly comes up. I don't want her to come up, but she's always there. And it has nothing to do with podcasting. She's just not wearing much clothing. And I'm like, is this what I have to do? Do I have to sell my body to get more attention for this show?
You may need to, Pete. Yeah.
Put your head on some boobs.
I'm going to use her body in my head. Yeah.
I don't know. But, and I guess you're supposed to say something like when you advertise this show, you say, all we talked about were tits.
Yeah.
I'm
going to try that
line from Melissa.
Never mind that I talk about the beauty of birth or children cost $100,000 plus to make, and that I've given a life to someone else, made their dream. Never mind all this feel good stuff. Boobs!
Boobs! Yeah. One of the things that I experienced with the podcast is all these wonderful people have these incredible things. They all have their problems, but they write books, they make movies, and I'm super artistically impressionable. So, I'm a failed comedian, I'm a failed singer, I'm all these other things. I am a great podcaster, right? And so I always I'm like, oh, here's my premise for a joke. You guys can use this because I'm never going to write the material because I'm not a comedian. You reach an age where by just being nice, because you've been around the block and you're like, I just want to be nice to people. When two couples interact and they're just nice and you're just generous and you're just like, hey, it's wonderful to be out with you guys because normally it's the kids or whatever it is. when those two couples leave, the other couple will say, "Do you think they were swingers?" And all you hear is like, "Nice," because you never know when you're being approached, and you're like, "I think that maybe they were." And so I don't know when that age is and how nice you have to be, but there is a line. I'm
I
sure.
have explored this premise, and it's weirder with women because for a woman to look at another woman and say, "I love your hair," and kind of reach out and touch it, or "Oh, your boobs look fantastic," or whatever. Like that's a little unusual, but it's not so like you would never reach out and touch Matt's hair,
Right.
you know, and like to say, you know, it's really. I mean, what are you using? Like
Your
so
bald
woman
looks
has-
fantastic, Pete. The last time I saw you.
But you know what I would do though? 100%. We're
Got it,
sitting there in the park and we're doing music in the park. The city puts it on. It's wonderful. And Matt, and I don't even know Matt, right? Matt sits down next to me with his wife, and it gets a little cold. And I'm like, "Hey, you guys don't have a blanket. Hey, do you want a blanket? Matt, I just met you. I'll give you my blanket." And all of a sudden it's
arm
like,
around him or kiss him on the mouth or anything.
"Yeah, not that yet. Not
Yeah.
yet.
Not yet.
You know, hey, you
Oh,
smell
dear.
nice. Is that cologne?" Right.
Right. See, but like I've been to places where, you know, you don't know. And then suddenly you're like, oh,
That's
Ooh.
the double O.
oh. Yeah.
By places, you mean Temecula, right?
I
That's
mean,
where you-
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I mean, you know, Canyon Lake gets a bad rap. Maybe they used to do that. I hear that all the time. Canyon Lake is a gated area just adjacent to Lake Elsinore. Like not as much meth, more money. You know, and they, you know, we go, "Oh, you know, that place, ha, ha, ha." But I found if I got on stage and said, "You know what I heard about this place, ha, ha, you're a bunch of swingers," or if I just mentioned the town next door is a bunch of swingers, everybody usually goes, "Oh, yeah," like I hit on some fun fact. But it's everywhere. The town,
every town.
like it's right next. Like if I was in Hemet, and I went, you know, San Jacinto, those pukes, you know, I don't have to worry about ever getting booked there, right? But, I'm like, you know, they're a bunch of, you know, and everybody was like, yeah, you know, it's just the town right next over that you're competing with for crappier town. That's swings. That's just a little formula I've worked out. I don't know if that's true, but or the room will go quiet when you start talking about stuff. I think we're all old enough that we've seen our share of stuff. I was on that show I was telling you about. One of the comics ahead of me was talking about having an OnlyFans account. Great, another app.
Right.
But they said, oh, it's for fitness models. I'm like, bullshit. It's for strippers and sex workers and fetish models. And I'm just like, I need to come up with an angle here because now everybody's doing this stuff from home. Like all I have to do is just stick a pole behind me and I'll be like, I'm middle-aged apathetic sex. That's me. You may or may not get some, whatever. Take the trash out, then click, you know, like, but you could pay, people would pay for that. And this guy, he said, well, me and my wife have OnlyFans accounts. And then he sort of like skipped off of that. And everybody in the crowd was 50 plus, which middle-aged, not old. And I got up after him. I'm like, listen, fruitcake, you can't be saying that and then leave us hanging. Like, don't blame the audience. They didn't understand. We were doing this stuff. We just weren't recording it or monetizing it. Like, share some tips. Just explain it. I'll translate for the ARP crowd what you're talking about. And the audience was like, oh, you know, like, oh, okay. You know, you could see the wheels turning. So there's a lot of freaky people out there. But the audience.
There's another line. I want to bring this other line up. At some point, you get so old, any sex act, no matter how deviant, we're not talking about anything horrible, but is awesome. Like, did you know that granddad, boop, like some horrible thing? Because, hey, at least granddad, who's 92, is like, if you're 92 and doing something, even if it's fucking freaky, it's like a touchdown. You're like, Gramps does this, or Grams does that. You want to see my nan's OnlyFans account.
Matt broke his shoulder falling out of a sex swing. He didn't
Yes. He's not old enough though. That's not like awesome.
Like Arrowhead, yeah.
Here's something I want to explore that I was thinking about. Somebody was talking about how they put on a couple of pounds and now they have a dad bod. And I'm like, people are into that. Like women are into that. They're like a guy that's not so fit that he might still want them because they're not so super fit. Mm-hmm. Like this is a guy I could go drinking with. Like he's in good shape, but he's got a little spare tire, love handles. Isn't that cute? And I'm like, but I don't love my love handles. Like I might love someone, you're like, oh, isn't he cute? look at him with the kids. I'm like, you never see a man looking at a woman going, oh, look, she got perfect butt. She just got a little, oh, look at her love handles. Like, look at her with all those kids. Like, I was like, there's a double standard I hadn't thought of. Just, why are dad bods marketable?
Plenty of them out there.
Yeah.
There's a time limit on dad bods too, though. So at some point, and I know this is true, as a middle-aged man, I become invisible to the point where I was in Ojai at our little cute little bed and breakfast kind of place, and they have a little bar by the pool. And there was like 3 young people in one part of the bar. And this is a tiny bar. It's maybe big enough for 6 people. And my girlfriend and I sitting there. And the young guy turns to me and says, "What's your name?" And I was shocked. I jumped and I said, "You can see me?"
Yeah.
I didn't think I exist, because you can ride on public transit.
And he reaches
no
out.
one knows you're there. They don't see
Oh,
you.
your hair is so soft, dude. Right? He starts admiring your glasses frames.
Right.
How good. You were being groomed. You didn't even know.
Right. Yeah.
And this kid and his wife with the OnlyFans account, he says, yeah, we normally go for like more mature couples because they're just, they have it together. And I'm just like, don't even. Like, just picture me with more clothes on, like a sweater, a jacket.
Right.
Yeah. Just, I don't look at myself naked. I sure as fuck don't want to see him naked. I don't see anybody naked. I told the audience that too. None of you.
What angle is the angle you're like, I cannot bear to see my, like, if you look at if I see a picture of me in a side profile, like my body, and I'm like, seriously, like normally most pictures, I'm like, who gives a damn? That's what I look like, but if I see my side, I'm like, oh my God, what a horrible mess of a human I am,
It's funny. I had a problem because you had asked me for a photo that wasn't a headshot. Oh, maybe something with you on stage. Well, when you work enough with somebody, like you have to remember to change clothes for different shows, so you're not wearing like the same outfit. And people think, oh, she did one show all year. Like I said, I work with that guy Dan Durney a lot, and Dan would take pictures, or sometimes an audience member, you say, hey, could you just snap a picture of me so I can post a picture? I was at this show. If they're sitting in the front, I've had it happen where it's just, if you picture you're on a stage, it's just slightly higher than the audience. The audience is sitting in, let's say, the front row, and they're shooting your set. I had a great set, and they sent me the video, and I went to use it, and it's just all crotch, like camel toe, and then like up here, dude, really?
Yeah.
And someone said, oh, that's a good set. I'm like, you know what you're looking at. Like I can't use this because it's just, so it's really hard to get a nice photo of just, and Dan manages to always be standing in the place where he's like, hey, I caught you at that angle right up your nose with the double chin and the back fat. How are you doing in front of me and get the back fat? How did you do that?
Yeah. There's the hero shot, and then there's the hideous, horrible monster shot.
Yeah.
The hero shot is never like, you reach an age where you're like, please don't shoot me from below. It's just not gonna go.
No. I was doing that 5 years ago, and I look back at some of the pictures that I was objecting to, and I'm like, you know what? I would pay money to look like that. Just one chin.
Yep.
I don't, and I don't mean to beat myself up. I like where I am in life. I'm trying, it's on me. Like if my kids can't read, I know whose fault that is. If I'm at peace, I know how that happened. Just saying, I was there. So I'm working on it. If I don't want my pictures to look like that, like the last show I did was with Matt and Dan, that monster. I'm like, I threw this shirt out that I was wearing right after he took all those pictures. I'm like, oh my God, it's like a sheet, like a tent. Like I thought I looked nice, I was like, no.
Right.
But I thought, oh, my hair looks nice, my skin looks nice. But I just was like, oh my God, I have put on so much weight, and it happens before you even notice it, And I was like, all right, that I made a commitment to do something about it.
Show me this picture in 10 years, and I'll be stoked about it. Yeah, it's all goes in the fall.
You want me to record your set? No, I don't.
No, thank you.
Back the phone right out of their hand. Tag you and everything before you can go, oh my God. I had one comic say, are you excited? Because I had tagged myself outside the gym when they were open. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, if I get any bigger, I'm going to have to deliver something because you know, like you don't just put on that much weight. So this comic sees me and he goes, "Are you excited?" And I'm like, "For what?" And he goes, "The baby." And I'm like,
Oh no.
right? And I'm like, first of all, I mean, all right, I'm glad that you think that I could still do that. I'm 52. So I was like, these are Jurassic eggs. And thank you for that. And two, hey, like, really? I must have looked huge. So yeah, another shirt I threw out. But yeah. Then I tagged him on Facebook. This motherfucker thinks I'm pregnant.
Yeah. That is one of those things, like there's certain questions you just don't ask, you know? And then as a dude, not to be dishonest, but the safe bet is always to go, "Melissa, what are you, 32, 33?" You know, and you just stick way below, like whatever you think they might be, you always go lower because it only pays the bills.
How old do you think I am?
Yeah.
I don't play that game.
Yeah.
No, I was 49 and I was kind of excited that I was going to be 50. Like, and I thought I looked pretty good. I'm like, I feel like you don't look almost 50. And I turned 50 and it got silent. Like if I told people I was 50, they'd go, "Oh, yeah, okay." Like, what happened?
Oh, I didn't see you sitting there. Sorry.
No,
Yes,
now people are 70. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm 70. I will be 71 and crushing it.
Yeah, you got to ratchet your age up.
Yeah.
Like, no, actually, it's great for my age. Yeah.
Right? I'm amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a liar. Aha.
Well, I don't want to keep you guys all night because I know you got kids and Matt's got a bad shoulder. He's got to go beat off in the corner or something.
Yeah, beating off's a lot more work these days. So yeah.
Yeah. But so seriously, thank you so much for coming on, Matt. Of course, thank you for setting all this up. It's great to be able to share these real moments and funny too. I mean, I had a great time. And I drink 2 beers.
It's nice to talk to adults.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, I'm crushing first grade at 52. It's nice to not have to, you know, mute your mic, sweetie, mute your mic, mute your mic, mute your mic, mute your mic. You know, bad.
There's a whole thing. I got to add this in where people reach an age where whatever technology for taking a camera becomes past their ability. And so you're always like open mouth, but bifocal. And so like my girlfriend and I were doing the photo booth at the event, you know, and the first 2 pictures, we're still trying to figure out that the booth is working, you know. It's
Right?
just so terrible.
You've got like, you know, 4 pictures like, is this on? Oh,
yeah, like that exact picture is in there. And then there's one we're like, "Oh my God, it's on." And then we got 1 picture, 1 shot.
Or like
the young people all come out looking great. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like that.
Right? I refuse to wear my glasses, but it's become problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I love that you're doing comedy. I love that you're producing shows. I hope that you're able to start doing that stuff again because we're desperate to be able to go out and do these things because you guys need to be in front of that microphone looking old and shitty and being funny as fuck. You know?
We have all aged.
That's my goal. Yeah.
We've aged a lot. It would be nice to come out and do comedy. We're all drying up in our houses.
All right, I'm going to sign this thing off. Stand by it.